Good afternoon. It's delightful to see so many of you here today. My name is Mary Beth Doherty. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Owens campus, and I serve on the Hall of Fame committee. It is my pleasure to represent Veronica Oni, who is the chairwoman of our committee today. Because she has laryngitis, I'm speaking on her behalf. Sorry about that. So on behalf of the Owens Campus Employee Hall of Fame Committee, welcome to our 27th Annual Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. As stated in your program, the Hall of Fame is a tribute to full-time Owens Campus employees who have served the college with distinction and have contributed to the growth, quality, and public acceptance of Delaware Technical Community College. The Hall of Fame Committee is honored to recognize Alan Jerry Williams as the 27th inductee to the Owens Campus Employee Hall of Fame. To the employees and retirees of Delaware Tech, and to our special guests, thank you for joining us today to honor Jerry. Please allow me to make some introductions. We are honored to have with us today President of Delaware Technical Community College, Dr. Mark Brainerd. As well as the Owens Campus Vice President and Campus Director, Dr. Bobby Behrens. We are also pleased that our Legacy Society members are here today, Linford Fawcett and Merrill Moore. We are so pleased and honored to have Jerry's wife, Stephanie, and son, Garrett, and many of Jerry's good friends with us today to celebrate Jerry's induction into the Hall of Fame. Please join me in welcoming them with a warm applause. Thank you all for coming, and now we will have lunch and we'll follow the directions of the Lighthouse Cove staff. Thank you.
I hope everyone had a wonderful lunch. Could we give a little round of applause for Lighthouse Cove? They always do a great job. Thank you, Paul. And while Lynn Fawcett's still standing, we should say happy birthday to him. Happy birthday, Lynn Fawcett. He'll kill me for that later, but that's okay. So what a perfect day to honor an amazing man. Before we hear remarks from our college president and Jerry's friends and colleagues, I wanted to take a moment to thank our Hall of Fame committee for their commitment to honoring outstanding Delaware Tech employees. I would like to point out that the committee consists of not only current Delaware Tech employees, but also many of our amazing retirees who come back every year to assist with the planning and execution of this event. Committee members, please stand and remain standing when I call your name so that we can applaud you as a group. Veronica Oni, chairperson. Myrna Abbott. Tamara Black. Chala Breen. Allison Buckley. Mary Beth Doherty. Denise Gooch. Jerry Hammond. Karen Swain. Mark Swarbrick. Lynn Wajda. And Debbie Ward. Please help me in thanking them. I would like to also recognize the past Hall of Fame honorees in attendance today. Again, I'm going to ask you to please stand and remain standing, and we will applaud you as a group. Hal McTeer, Lois Studi, Charlotte Purnell Langrel, Anna Legates Bestie, Butch Lee, Merrill Moore, and Terry Johnson. So Jerry, you're going to join all of them on the wall outside the library. I hope you're okay with that. All right, okay, cool, good. Okay, and play rugby. You guys play rugby too. And can I ask you guys to do one more thing, because I didn't read my notes and I should have done this. So will you guys stand again, and then will the other retirees that are in attendance today stand also, because I want to recognize all of you. I love when I have a long list of retirees. So, Ann Del Negro, Debbie, I'll call you out by name. Welcome home. As you know, Jerry was a champion for water and wastewater quality throughout the region and ultimately around the world. He was a visionary, a problem solver, a dedicated employee, a teacher, a mentor, and a friend to so many at the college and in our community. The relationships that he built were long-lasting, just like the impact he made on our campus and in the communities he and the programs he developed served. We are so pleased to honor this man and his legacy today. At this time, I would like to invite Delaware Tech alum and college president, Dr. Mark Brainerd, to the stage.
Thank you, Bobby. Good afternoon. This is always a popular event as it brings together our current faculty and staff with our retirees and other friends of Delaware Tech. So thank you all for making time in your schedule to be here. As Bobby said, we always celebrate seeing retirees and former team members. I think it's because we all secretly aspire to join the ranks and become one of you, and we all have our own reunions in Margaritaville someday. So we're very fortunate to have many of Jerry Williams' family members, friends, and former colleagues here today. As Bobby said, Jerry is known here at Delaware Tech as a visionary, a problem solver, and an advocate for our students. He came to us after 20 years of service as an officer in the U.S. Army, and then spent another 20 years here as an instructor and department chair. Shortly after joining the college, Jerry worked with local and regional directors to apply for and obtain an EPA grant to build the Environmental Training Center right here at the Owens campus. Obviously, someone truly ahead of his time. When the center opened in 1997, Jerry was the first acting director, and he worked tirelessly to improve water and wastewater quality throughout our region, obtaining other grants to help underperforming facilities gain compliance with state and federal regulations. He even worked on a global level through the U.S. Agency for International Development to implement a comprehensive curriculum designed to train and test water and wastewater operators in Bulgaria and Jordan. And in 1997, Jerry organized the first Water and Wastewater Operator of the Year Award, a ceremony to honor Delaware operators for exceptional performance. All the while, he was deeply committed to helping his students succeed in the classroom and ultimately in the workplace. And his work has continued to make an impact on his students long after retirement. Jerry's a perfect example of the type of passionate faculty member who makes our college what it is today. Not only were his individual achievements noteworthy and impressive, but they were for the benefit of our students, our community, our state, and our world, something really that's unusual for any faculty member or team member. Jerry spent a long career in service to others, and we are incredibly fortunate that he spent much of his time making a difference right here at Delaware Tech. On behalf of our Board of Trustees and the entire Delaware Tech family, we want to say congratulations and thank you to Jerry as we celebrate his induction into the Hall of Fame. Thank you, Jerry.
So at this time, I'd like to invite Jerry Esposito up, fellow wastewater champion and friend and colleague of Jerry Williams. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everyone. Jerry, good seeing you again. I was here for less than 30 seconds and he told me 2 jokes when I sat down. Is that a surprise? No, of course not. So good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. I'm Jerry Esposito. Recently retired from being president of Tidewater Utilities for 20 years. And then before that, and I'm telling you this only because that's my relationship with Jerry. I was the Director of Water Resources for DNREC, so Bobby's right. I've spent a lot of time in wastewater. We have other words for it, and water. So I've been a friend and a colleague of Jerry for over 25 years. It's my honor to be here to recognize Jerry. This year's inductee is the Employee of the Year for Del Tech, and it recognizes not only the individual's contributions to the college, but also to the community, and in this case, something near and dear to my heart, to water and wastewater and its industry. So I'll tell you my 25-year story of Jerry Williams and how it started. Shy person that he is, he just showed up one day at my door at DNREC, so I was the water director there, and it was at the time, at the end of the 80s, when the Reagan administration had dismantled and abolished the construction grants program for wastewater construction. Some of you in the audience should be nodding your heads. Remember that? So we used to give away grants, and now it's a loan program, but at the time, anything that was in the pipeline would get funded with grants and loans, and DNREC administered its part of the state's construction grants program with EPA, and it was in my division that we had that. So this was toward the end, money was running out, but there was money left over. And Jerry found out about money being left over. So he shows up. I don't know him from Adam. He introduces himself, tells a joke or 10, and he said he got a job, tried to describe it, and said, I've got a job where I've got to make it pay for itself. I've heard that phrase a lot from him. So, but he had an idea, and it was a great idea. He said, let's build a place where actual water and wastewater practitioners could go and put into practice things that they read about or learned about or heard about from teachers in books, and let's do it at a full scale, and we'll do it in Georgetown, and it won't cost a lot of money. And what about this leftover money that you have? See, this money was, if you didn't, it was a period of time where if you didn't use it, it would go back to the federal government and they would redistribute it throughout the country. And the states had the ability to earmark that before it went back. So, you know, it wasn't too hard to figure out that Jerry had a great idea. He reeled me in quickly. We bonded not only with the jokes, because he and I have the same irreverent sense of humor. We're both sports people. He found out I was a Yankee fan, so you know, and he didn't hold that against me. But then he found out that I played rugby in college at Rutgers, and then you know the floodgates opened, right? So I talked about how I broke my knee, and you know, and here it is. Just last year, that knee finally got replaced after all these years. So I limped along, but then we talked about rugby, and then when we left, I said, Jerry, what do you need? He says, well, I need the grant money. Anyway, long story short, we were able to get it. It was seed money, and I forget the amount, but it was several $100,000, somewhere $600,000 to $700,000 that then was used to match and put that thing that's there, that's nationally recognized. It's all because of his idea and that little bit of seed money that we came up with. So that jumpstart really made history here, and it's nationally, regionally, and internationally known. Nobody else had done this before. So not only did it help train students, but it also helped train educators. Most of the water and wastewater operators in the state have gone through that program in some fashion. And not just operators, other professionals, and virtually, speaking as the former president of Tidewater, by the way, I'm consulting with Tidewater, so I still have a very good affiliation with Tidewater under contract right now. So I can still, anybody who's got any Tidewater complaints, you can still talk to me, and I'll take care of it for you. And virtually all of Tidewater's operators have not just gone through it, but some of them ended up being affiliated with it in an education way. And some of those operators are here today, by the way. So Jerry had a passion for educating and supporting the honing of teachers and students and trainers. He was his passion was legendary. He worked with the community with the system owners, meaning the guys who owned and guys and girls who owned the water plants, wastewater plants, to make sure that they had the right operators there. He raised the bar of the profession of water and wastewater such that it became something that people wanted to go work in. And that was a huge accomplishment. And I remember my quick story with Tidewater, and I'm looking at Ken Cross, he was there when this happened. We hired all water operators, and then we decided we would get in the wastewater business. And those water operators didn't want to get their hands dirty, literally. So it wasn't an industry that was sexy for a lot of people. I'm here to tell you that's changed now. This is a good industry, they pay well, and we have somewhere, having just served on, stepped down from the Board of Certification, I know there's somewhere around 450 licensed wastewater operators alone in the state of Delaware. So he worked with all of those people, and then he worked with legislators because there was always something he needed money for. So he became politically adept, got me involved in some of that too. And he also established, as you heard, the Water, Wastewater Operators and Professionals Operator of the Year Award, I'll call it. It was something other than that. And now that program has a certificate named for Jerry. Tidewater is very proud we participated and sponsored that. We've got, I'm happy to say, still representing Tidewater, we've got the most honorees in that program. I got an award from that program along with Hillary that day. Remember, you and I were brother and sister up there on that stage. And it's one of my favorite awards, that environmental professional. It's the one I have in my home office now that I no longer have an office up in Dover. But he also had a commitment to teaching, as I said. Many of Tidewater and my former DNREC colleagues became trainers, teachers. These people would have otherwise never taught. It's just not in their being. But because Jerry decided that real practitioners needed to teach these young students what it's like out there in the real world, in the water and wastewater business, they got the opportunity, and they love it. Some of my folks call it a real opportunity and a real blessing that they can now be called teachers. So this privilege would not have normally come to them in a normal career path. He created this real-world teaching environment so that students could understand and learn from a practical, not just academic sense, from real practitioners. In an environment where it's full scale, you can see the water, you can see the gauges, you can see the meters, you can turn valves. Always behind all this, as the teachers were doing their thing, students were cranking up, he never let go. He was always there. He was always remembered as the former of this program, founder of this program, because he would stay involved. And sometimes he'd show up in class and tell a joke or 10, and everybody would love it, and they all remember this is Jerry's program. So when it came time for Jerry to retire from here, we had a committee, as many things happen. You have a committee, and we decided we wanted to name something for him. And it turns out, Mark, that the bureaucracy at Del Tech is pretty heavy on that, unless you have a lot of money, which we didn't have. But we figured out a way to name something for Jerry Williams right at the Environmental Training Center. So what's there now, and it's appropriate that we found a way to pay for a bench so that we could go sit on Jerry Williams with our butts and talk about Jerry Williams. And it's just there. I visited this morning, and it's still there. So if you want to go put your butts on Jerry Williams' bench and talk about Jerry, you can still do that. Jerry's an institution in Delaware's water, wastewater community. Anybody who's been in this business for any period of time knows the name Jerry Williams. He was just a visionary. He had the guts. He took risks. He completely deserves this great honor of being the industry's Del Tech, being inducted this year as Del Tech's Employee of the Year. In my mind, he's the godfather of this country's gold standard for this kind of a business, this system. There's nothing else like it, and it's all because of Jerry. Congratulations, Jerry.
Jerry, I bet you have a joke about the Godfather thing, but we'll just wait for that for later. Okay, you got a plan for that, all right, good. So next I'd like to invite up another person that's knee-deep in wastewater a lot of times, Dave Ennis. So come on up, Dave, friend, colleague of Jerry's.
My apologies for my slow walk. I'm about to go for my 8th knee operation. So, and none of that is Jerry's fault. Good afternoon. My name is David Ennis, and I'm here today to say a couple of nice things about my friend Jerry Williams. But before I say those things, I think it might be helpful if I share a couple comments about where I came from and how Jerry and I became acquainted. I grew up in nearby Pennsylvania in the southernmost corner between Philadelphia and Chester. My town had about 5,000 people, one of whom you Del Tech folks from Georgetown will remember, Bob Johnson. Bob, wave your hand over there. They may not be able to see you in the shadows. We attended a high school called Ridley Park. It was a very small public school near a lot of very large schools in the bigger cities. We didn't know it at the time, but later in life, many of us felt we grew up in Mayberry. The Town was a TV show that our town, like many in the industrial corridor along the Delaware River, had a little secret. They, like many other towns in the area, didn't properly treat our wastewater very effectively. But we all dumped our partially treated wastewater into that big old Delaware River that was supposed to carry the stuff downstream. But somewhere along the way, the stuff didn't always flow out of town fast enough. And many times in the hot summer days, the sun would bake that brew in the river until it became so polluted and it would stink so bad that the airline pilots landing and taking off at the Philadelphia airport complained about the stench that they would encounter as they flew into our region. As a teenager, an uncle of a very good friend of mine took me out on the Delaware River to learn how to water ski. But before he tried to get us up on the skis, we rode around in the river for a while so he could explain what was floating in the river and what we should avoid skiing into if we could. That was quite an experience for this teenager and something that I never forgot. It was a life-changing experience for me. Fast forward me 40 years, and I'm now a member of a committee in Dover, Delaware, called the Delaware House of Representatives Joint Finance Committee, and I'm sitting near a wonderful lady named Miss Tina Fallon of Seaford, Delaware. We're talking about things that we each would like to see make it into the state budget that year. Near the top of her list was a program called the Environmental Training Center at Del Tech, and the lead man that she said was a ball of fire guy named Jerry Williams. She said he is hopefully going to do wonderful things for the state of Delaware and for the region and Georgetown campus at Del Tech. I was pretty familiar with that name, Del Tech, in part because my rep district adjoined a fellow in the city of Wilmington's district named Lonnie George, who happened to have a connection to Del Tech. I will also admit that I had been connected to the Del Tech Industrial Training Center at the Stanton campus and did some work at the General Motors plant for the school. One of the major factors that had become apparent was that Jerry was a great team builder. He had established the school as a player among the Delaware-based regulators and the professional business-based water companies like Tidewater and Artesian. So it didn't take a lot of hard selling by Tina to get me to be a willing supporter of her funding goal and the college. But it did take several other members of the committee to find the right spot within the budget for operating funds to be passed through to Del Tech. The final pass-through vehicle for the flow of funds turned out to be a line in the DENREC budget, since they looked after the environment of Delaware. It didn't take long for the program to make itself well known across the state and the region. And since the training was getting a strong rating by everyone, including a strong rating from the EPA Region 3, it even caught the attention of the big cities in our neighborhood, such as Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, where they wanted their people to be as well trained as the staff and facilities in Delaware. Then there was an article in the National Geographic magazine where the entire magazine was devoted to the problems of water issues around the world. And soon the folks from Bulgaria and later Jordan were at the Del Tech campus asking for help. There was another step that Jerry took, which has been mentioned already, which I think was a stroke of genius. Jerry, along with the help of his ever-growing team of industrial supporters and state agencies, jointly created the Operator of the Year Awards program. No one had ever taken the time to make the workers of the wastewater and drinking water plants feel so appreciated. And that event has grown into an annual highlight of the water and wastewater industry in Delaware. I'll bet there are some plaques on some walls in some very unusual places in Delaware today as a result. It's also my impression that because of the attention that Delaware Tech has provided to the workers in the water industry, we have a younger group of people in this career path than many other states. I'd like to add a couple quick comments on two other groups of people. First, the family of Jerry Williams. He met and married a beautiful young lady from Sussex County, from Bridgeville, and that was one of the smartest moves in his life. He has two wonderful kids, Garrett and Aaron. And Aaron has followed her dad into the protection of the environment by working in an administrative position for the Philadelphia Water Department, helping to keep the Delaware River clean now. As I said, during my time in the General Assembly, I was fortunate to become affiliated with the college within the Industrial Training Center at the Stanton campus. But later, when I retired, I was invited to spend some time at Georgetown, and they found me a desk within the Environmental Training Center. Now, I will admit there was some apprehension on the part of several of the college officials because they were afraid that Jerry and I in one building might create a real trouble problem. That never happened. Shortly after Jerry had his health problem, I was asked to fill in for Jerry at a display table at the conference center at Harrington. During my stint there, I met dozens of people who knew Jerry and had heard about his health problems. And many had been taught by Jerry, and they had said they had been taught by Jerry on their way to earning their certification. To a person, they all said, had it not been for Jerry, I probably would not have passed the math portion of the requirements, but because of Jerry's patience and his teaching style, I was able to get it done correctly. Now, I will also admit to you that when Jerry called me about this event, he said to me there were some teachers from Brandywine High School that had rolled over in their graves when it was announced that he was going to be admitted to the Hall of Fame here at Del Tech. I'm not sure that was because of academics or behavior. Both. That brings to mentioning a couple other folks who have worked sometimes out of the limelight of the program, but who were key to the training's successes. There was a group of part-time instructors, and I would not be able to name many of them, but they did such things like driving to D.C. to help train the staff members of the D.C. water system and Philadelphia. So they went above and beyond in training folks in our region. I would also like to point out, I believe Steve Rome is here. Steve, would you wave your hand as well? Steve was also willing to take on special assignments overseas, not in Paris, but in places where you wouldn't want to be in some parts of the village at night because you may not make it back to the hotel. I'd also like to mention Susan Stamat, who I believe is here today as well. Susan, will you wave? Thank you. Susan seemed to be, I think, the responsible party for keeping everything afloat. No pun intended. But while I was in that building, I can say she worked tirelessly, particularly as they were trying to convert training manuals into foreign languages for other countries. And I think that Susan deserves a special round of applause, and Steve as well. So if I'd like to make... And I'd also like to make sure that we mention Hillary Valentine, who was an instructor before she took over the lead of the department. I thank you very much as well. Anyone who knows Jerry knows that he has a team of ghostwriters that provide him a steady flow of jokes. Even after the health issue, Jerry has not lost one beat. But we have now discovered the source of the new jokes. And many of us that live in Lewis have now concluded that Stephanie is on his joke writing team, and that's because she goes to the church choir practice and gets new material. And Jerry filters most of that out, but he does use some of that. And then she brings it home and Jerry modifies it a little bit, jazzes it up. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jerry, for your giant contributions to the world's environment and to Del Tech, and for your friendship, and congratulations on your recognition here today.
Thank you, Dave and Jerry. We really appreciate you sharing. When we called them, they were like, of course, when do we have to be there? So thank you guys so much. And you were very kind. You didn't roast them. You had the mic. I mean, wow, they're good friends, Jerry. Yeah, that's true. Before we ask Jerry, Stephanie, and Garrett to join us in front of the stage for the unveiling of Jerry's plaque that'll be placed in the Hall of Fame, I ask that you turn your attention to the video screens for a brief video.
Those were beautiful pictures. Thank you for allowing us to share a little bit of your life and your past through the video. So now I would like to invite Jerry, Stephanie, Garrett, Dr. Behrens, Dr. Brainerd to the front of the stage. Delaware Technical Community College proudly inducts Alan Jerry Williams into the Owens Campus Employee Hall of Fame. You may unveil the plaque.
What I want to know, how come I was the ugliest guy in all this picture?
No, my brother surprised me. James Williams' son, mine. I was flying up from Florida, he's retired governor, for this event, and his son Mike. First, I want to thank the committee for honoring me with this award. I wasn't on. Let me start over again. First, I was honored. My brother surprised me, and his father was the one that started the West Point tradition. His father was married my mother in the Philippines, and my brother Tin was born in the Philippines. His father was the first graduate of the family graduating class in 1937. And so he always wanted to go to West Point. And because of him, I always wanted to go to West Point, which was, I knew it was going to be sketchy for me with my academic record. But all my life, I was surrounded by loudies. You're probably thinking, what the heck's he talking about? My mom graduated cum laude from Alexis DuPont, and then she graduated cum laude from nursing school at the Methodist Hospital in Philadelphia. My brother graduated cum laude from PS DuPont. He graduated cum laude from the Military Academy in '62. And I graduated, thank you, Laude. But I didn't follow my brother's footsteps when it came to branch assignments. You know, my brother was smart. He graduated like the top 5% of his class at West Point, and he was first in chemistry. I was toward the bottom of the class. So at the end of your senior year there, you get to choose what branch you want to take. You know, branch like infantry, artillery, armor, air defense artillery. All the smart guys go engineer, which my brother did. All the not so smart guys like me go infantry. But, you know, I wanted to go infantry anyhow because I like being a ranger and jumping out of planes going 300 miles an hour. Although it was hard for me to get out the door of an aircraft doing 300 miles an hour at airborne school. It was even harder spending all night in a swamp with 34-degree water up to your chest at ranger school. And my first assignment was in Germany, where I started playing rugby. This guy said, "Hey, you want to come play rugby?" I was like, I don't understand rugby. I don't want to play. So one day he said, "Look, you got to take me to a game because I lost my license. Bring your spikes. We might need you." So I did. And first game I played, when I saw the party, I said, "This is a game for me." After every rugby game, there's a party. You sing songs and drink a lot of beer. So I played rugby every place I went. I lived. You know, rugby's an easy sport to understand. There's only two rules. If you run out into the field and you find a sphere, if it's bald, pick it up and run with it. If it's got hair on it, kick it. So after Germany, I came back to the infantry school at Fort Benning, and we started a rugby team there. And our coach was an Australian named Jeremy Stanek. And after the first practice, he starts talking to us, and and everybody's looking at each other. Do you understand anything he said? You couldn't understand. It's like up and down the bloody pitch. We couldn't understand a thing he was saying. Let's see. After Benning, I went to flight school, and then after flight school, I went to Fort Hood. And at Fort Hood, I was fortunate enough to play on a team in Austin. I made the All-Texas rugby team. And those boys from Texas told me if there was a back door to the Alamo, there wouldn't be a Texas. And after Texas, I went to Korea for a year. That was kind of cold. No, really cold. And after Korea, I came back to Monterey. Monterey, California, at Fort Ord, where I was aviation troop commander and a battalion training and operations officer. And when I was home on leave one time, the lady I was married to in Texas ran off with another guy when I was in Korea. That really hurt me. So I was home at the beach in our cottage in Dewey, which my mom built with the money she got from her first husband's death in the Philippines. And it was a real family treasure to us. I was drunk for a week straight. My mom said, look, you're afraid of women. You need to go out there and meet a nice girl. So that night I met my wife, Stephanie. We spent 3 days together and then got married and drove to California. After California, we went to Japan. After Japan, we came back to Virginia because I wanted to be close to take care of my mom. She was getting older and moved to the plantations here. I took care of her for 3 years. And then I retired. And I came to work here. So when I first started this thing, people would ask me, what's the difference between water and wastewater? I'd say, well, you know, I wouldn't drink any water till you figure it out. And I want to thank all the flattering, but probably overinflated comments of the original Italian stallion, Jerry Esposito. You know, he's a real Jersey boy, and he had to get the day off today from Tony Soprano. Yeah, but when I decided to do this environmental training center, I went to see Jerry. And he sat down with a big smile on his face, said, what can I do to help you? I was like, oh, this is more like it. He said, you know, I think we have a $500,000 grant that's sitting back there that I could give you. And I said, that's really more like it. And I found out he was a rugby player. And I want to thank everybody for being here. It's great to see a lot of people. This is a great honor. I want to thank Veronica Oni for arranging this ceremony. I mean, this is a great honor, but you know, the best honors I've ever received is when I've been out and around with Steve, operators will come up to me and thank me. In fact, a few of them have thanked me at the ceremony. And Dave wrecked his knee because he was a football player. But you know, he had a letter from the Naval Academy, but he said he didn't want to go there because they're afraid of the hazing. Everybody knows the Naval Academy is like a hippie school. And if you want to see some real hazing, go to the military academy the first 2 weeks of July, what they call beast barracks. You know, my brother always gave me a heads up of the next 10 years of my life. And so, I don't know why I did this, but in junior high, I decided to take Russian. I figured I was going to be in the Army. I might have to talk my way out of a tight spot if we fought the Russians. But then in 10th grade, it got too hard for me, so I had to drop out. And he said, when you go to West Point, don't tell anybody there that you have ever taken Russian or have an interest in Russian. Because if they find that out, they make you take it, because nobody signs up for Russian. It's too hard. And we had guys that were taking like Chinese and all this math and engineering. And after a couple weeks, they were down to like 40 pounds, and their faces were all hollow and gaunt. And they were like in bed just crying all the time. So in '92, when I retired, I was hired by Jack Owens, who was also a vet, to work in the adult education division. And our mission was to train the industrial workforce back, and we were stationed back in the Trades and Industry building. So I looked around Sussex County, and the only industry I could see down here was like retail. So I made up a flyer. I delivered a flyer to every retail shop in the county. I found a book. I found an instructor. The day of the first class, the instructor and I were waiting, and nobody showed up. So I said, well, it's going to be a little harder than I thought. And then my boss, Pat Carmine, who's here today, said, I think there's something environmental going on. You need to go to this meeting. And it had Ed Halleck and his crew, and they wanted training for water operators, like we've been training wastewater operators. Now, let me tell you what, the core of the Environmental Training Center was the administrative staff and our instructors. The administrative staff is responsible for fielding all telephone calls, walk-in questions, and getting student handout material ready for our seminars, which we run about 50 seminars a year. And the student handout packets are probably 100 pages of copying to make. So they were always really busy. We've had some really good ones there, starting out with Mary Lou McCabe, and then Judy Fleischman, and then Karen Burrows, who's here. And Karen Burrows went with us on our trip to Bulgaria, where we were introduced to the Bulgarians with Disabilities Act. She broke her leg right before coming, so this Bulgarian weightlifter gave her a piggyback ride on their plane. And one night I was accosted walking around Sophia and dimly lit street by 4 gypsies. And they're called Rome over there. And they're like, Meester, Meester. 4 girls, $2. I was like, no, I don't think so. So I had to turn around and run. And when I got down the street, I started checking everything, and they had pickpocketed my passport. So I looked back, and one of the girls, I hear, Mister, Mister. They're holding up my passport and smiling. So I walked back to them, and I gave them the $2 just to get my passport back. And then we were contacted by Jordan, which was a very interesting. And my constant traveling companion was Steve Rome. There's not an answer about water or wastewater that he can't answer. Not a question he can't answer. And really, so the first time I met Jerry Esposito, he had a big smile on his face. And I found out he was a rugby player. I'm not sure if I belong in the same category as these people, like Jack Owens and Tim Cable. But as I think back over my 2 careers, first in the Army and then here, my part in developing the ETC, the development of ETC has meant more to me than any other single thing I've accomplished. And I'm proud to have been a part of it along with most of the people in this room. Thank you.
In and keep it nice and short and sweet for you guys. My name is Garrett Williams. I'm Jerry's son. But try not to cry. It's going to be a little hard. Sorry. When I was 4 years old in '93, I was at the same ceremony for my grandfather, Stephen J. Betts. So it's a very proud moment to have 2 members of our family in this. My father, Jerry Williams, built a career here at Del Tech that spanned the majority of my childhood years. I took this opportunity to reflect on those days from a new perspective of having worked through the early stages of my own career. When I was young, it was easy to get excited over my father's vast military career. Having a dad who was a retired Army Ranger helicopter pilot from West Point was always a point of boastful pride among my friends. Excuse me. Those years of his career defined what I believed a true man's man was. Strong, athletic, proud, honest, funny, and hardworking. I wasn't able to correlate those character traits over to his post-military career here at Deltech quite as easily. I knew he was an educator of sorts and worked with environmental projects. I knew that he kept a big Lego helicopter that I made for him on display in his office until the day he retired. I knew that he took us with him to travel for work once a year in really cool cities around the country, which I later found out were EPA conferences. You know, and now I get excited to travel for my own conferences for work, and just looking back on that is a strange thing. I also knew that he must have had a certain amount of clout here to be able to show up to work every day wearing those stupid Crocs on his feet. Jeez. I can't remember if he made the exception for work and at least wore socks with him, and if not, then I apologize to his co-workers that are here today on his behalf. My father is a lover of the quirky and weird and has a knack of making any person he meets feel instantly comfortable and welcome. There's a critical measurement that I finally discovered over years of field tests, 15 minutes. That's the amount of time any stranger can spend in close proximity to my father for him to have found out your full name, a brief history of your entire career, what schools you went to, what sports your kids play, and a joke tailored to your exact sense of humor. I think I've capped out at achieving the same effect in about 45 minutes, but in my defense, I like to believe that I take a more tactful and conservative approach. Looking back at my father's career today is a much different experience for me. When people ask me what my father did for work, I now proudly explain that he helped build the Environmental Training Center at Deltech from the ground up. I make sure that everyone knows what a monumental achievement it is to have such a high-profile and international program like that centered in our small state. I want my dad today to know just how proud I am to be able to say this, and that I use it as a standard for what I want to achieve in my own career in order to be able to retire one day feeling fulfilled. I look back on his years here that were once so hard for me to understand and now model my life based on them. I can truly say that I could not have a better role model in my life. Thank you.
Everybody here knows me, knows I don't need a microphone, so I'm not going to get back up on the stage. But Jerry, this plaque will be hung tomorrow, or not tomorrow, our gang won't be here, sorry, in this facility. Tomorrow, facility, sorry. Will be hung on Monday, and you'll be across the hall from your father-in-law, which I think is pretty cool. And Mary Beth's dad as well, which is we walk through the hall, he will remember you and all you did very, very fondly. And this goes on the wall, but the committee also wanted to provide you with this keepsake with a picture of the wall, of the wall hanging, the plaque, and a copy of the program so that you can hang this in your home as well. So we congratulate you. We thank you for your many, many years of service to the college. And you did build this program. This is Jerry Williams' program, without a doubt. So congratulations. And I'll stick my tongue out at you when I walk by. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. Retirees, welcome home again. Thank you for coming back. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.